But I just wanted to say welcome. Thank you to everybody who has joined, all of our solar ambassador volunteers that do all of our public education for us, and for all the solar tour hosts that have joined us this evening. We just want to thank you for all of the hard work that you do to advance solar development here in the state of Illinois. I'm Lesley McCain. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Solar Education Association, as well as the, which is the 501c3 that does our public education, as well as the 501c6, which is the Illinois Solar Energy and Storage Association, which is the trade association for the state. We keep both those sides of the coin pretty siloed, but sometimes we have opportunity to do some crossover, and we really enjoy that. So you'll see some of the folks presenting for us tonight are from either side of the organization. But next I want to introduce Nicola Brown, ISEA's program manager. You have gotten, I think, quite a few communications with Nicola over the years. She works very hard to ensure that the Illinois Solar Education Association education opportunities are robust, and we appreciate all of her hard work. Nicola, I think you have a couple of slides that you wanted to kick us off with.
Thanks, Lesley. I do. So welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to switch over to the agenda. You've probably received this in an email from me, as Lesley said, but we're really excited to have a lot of really wonderful speakers today, covering a lot of really important topics. So Lesley and I will be covering some state and federal incentives and storage legislation. We have Lisa Albrecht from Albrecht Solar. She's also one of our board members, who will be discussing the new net metering system. We have Hanna Downey, who is at Certasun and also a leader at Go Green Wilmette, who will be addressing residential storage. We have Jan Gudell at Elevate, who will be talking about the Residential Solar for All program. And finally, we have two of your own, Jeff Gahris and Jay Futterman, who are ISEA Solar Ambassador Committee members, who will be talking about community solar. As a note for everyone who joined a little late, we will be recording the presentation, and we'll be taking questions in the chat following each section of the presentation. So we'll have a few minutes for questions in between each topic. So we'll go ahead and get it underway. First of all, state incentives. I think you're all pretty familiar with how the state incentives work, and the system has remained largely unchanged. So you'll still be getting your 15 years upfront, and this year's blocks are full and there's a waiting list, but the new prices for the next program year will be released in the next couple of months. You can see the current prices on the slide here for each block. And so that means in AMRD territory versus ComEd territory, the prices are a little bit different. And then in addition to these, there is a smart meter rebate that is available for new installations. And I think Lisa will be going a little bit more into that during her part of the presentation. A few resources to know, and we'll send this out in an email after the presentation. Illinois Shines is the website for the administrator of the program, and there's a lot of really great resources there, including a capacity dashboard, so you can see how much residential solar RECs are available, for instance, and some consumer FAQ pages and a lot of other really great information. Federal incentives. As of today, there are no changes so far to the federal investment tax credit. I know that is a worry for a lot of people. ISEA has been in contact with our Illinois federal legislators to inform them of the importance of the credit, and we will continue to work to protect it. We've had a couple of meetings with some of our federal reps and senators. And then you can see on the side here just the general breakdown as it is today. And Finally, ISEA is working this year to pass some legislation that will help support storage in our state. And that includes creating 15,000 megawatts of clean storage to help our growing capacity. And once again, I'll put this website in our follow-up email. Solar Powers Illinois is a group that we have formed with a few other trade organizations to help promote this bill. Leslie, is there anything you would like to add here?
No, I think that's great, Nicola. Yes, I know people are nervous. We're all nervous about the ITC. Well, we're nervous about a lot of things these days, but we're definitely nervous about the ITC. We have been working to educate our federal representatives and senators on the importance of maintaining that. One of the resources on the Illinois Shines page is a map of all the projects in the state that can be sorted by district. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Sorted by zip code. And so we have let those federal legislators see how much solar is in their district. So it's been pretty impressive. And I think we've made some good headway. So so keep that in your thoughts and prayers that we continue to maintain that in this current environment. I think that's good.
Great. And so
introduce Lisa.
Next up is Lisa Albrecht. She has a solar company called Albrecht Solar, and she is also on the ISEA board, and she will be telling us about net metering.
And I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to mention again, in case you joined late, we are taking questions after each speaker so that everything's fresh in your mind. So please put your questions in the chat, and we'll read those out after the presentation, each individual presentation.
Cool. Well, hopefully people have recovered from the sprint of last year and the uncertainty around losing legacy net metering. Just as a reminder, legacy net metering allowed, if you look at the graphic at the bottom, you got credits for any energy that was on the supply side, delivery, as well as taxes and fees, as well as the state and federal incentives. And it was a sprint to the end. I heard that in the last 2 weeks of 2024, ComEd got 1,500 applications, systems that were energized, and we're just waiting for permission to energize. So people were scrambling to get everything done. I think there still is well, they probably have worked through the backlash and all of the stuff. I didn't hear any numbers out of Ameren. So it was a sprint. So I don't want to talk about the past because we don't like to tell people what they missed. And instead, and just a reminder, this is what the bill looked like. You got the credits under supply, delivery, taxes, and fees section. So, and I apologize, I have been coughing for a month. On the new rules, people will only get a supply charge credit on their electric bill. They no longer get delivery or taxes and fees. And I'll be honest, that's about half the value. As we look at the bill, we'll see kind of what's been going on with some of the rates. People can choose whether they want to get a 1-for-1 kilowatt hour credit, or whether they want to go with a monetary credit. I think monetary credits are probably better, and I'll show some examples, but it's important to know that, if you remember, people used to pick April, October for when their review period would end. We no longer have those kind of deadlines. So any excess energy credit, a kilowatt hour credit or a dollar credit, those continue until they've been used. They no longer have a sunset date. So that's good news. That's a little bit less confusing. In addition, there's a new incentive. So people are also able to get a rebate. Again, the cute little graphic that Nicola made. So you get supply side credits, you get a $300 rebate per kilowatt of installed capacity. And then that's a little bit different than the storage rebate that Amy will talk about. And then in addition, you obviously get the state and federal incentives. So people kind of need to think, I think a lot of times consumers don't recognize that there's actually 3 ways that they're saving on their bill. For those of you that have solar, you know that the bulk of your savings is actually energy that you produced live on site and consumed as soon as you made it. So you're not sending it. So you need to remember that the value of that energy is still the full retail net metering, because that means you've avoided costs from the grid. So in essence, you are getting a credit for energy on the supply side, the delivery side, as well as the taxes and fees. It's just not recorded on your electric bill. But because those are avoided costs, those truly are your savings. So a lot of times people just look at their bill and they think that's all they've saved, when in reality, if they look at how much they produced, and I try to remind customers, ComEd doesn't know what you made. All that ComEd knows is what you sent to them. And that's the second place that you see your savings. So energy that's sent to the grid, so anything in excess. And so people, again, will either get to choose on the supply side whether they want a kilowatt hour credit or whether they want a dollar credit. The other thing that people will be able to choose is whether they want to stick with fixed rates or when they want to shift their billing to hourly. And I recommend that people look at that very carefully and not just jump, because there's a whole complication of capacity charges. And I didn't intend on going into that today, but I certainly can answer some questions. But understanding how capacity charges will change on your supply side of your bill, because it does change. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there is the solar rebate. So let's look at some examples. Just because people have been unsure on like how to really monetize. So what this chart does is it kind of looks at an average bill. So you can see in the first column, that's what somebody's historic grid usage was. And you can see that the solar has actually been designed to exceed how much they're actually offsetting from their bill. And in the right-hand side, I don't know if we could see my cursor, in the right-hand side, the IPA has some guidelines. If you're on fixed rates and you do not have storage, ComEd assumes that if the solar is greater than 80% of your historic usage, you're going to use about 55% of that and send the rest to the grid. If the solar is less than 80% of your grid usage, you're actually going to use most of that. So you'll use on site about 75% and send 25% to the grid. So what this table does is it actually breaks out the kilowatt hours based on that. So you'll see this column that says solar used on site. So again, I'm applying, if in January, for example, if your solar produced 325 kilowatt hours and you consumed 545, then that's about 60%. And so you'd use on site possibly somewhere around 244 kilowatt hours. You'd send back to the grid about 80. So again, it's that 75 split. So solar on site, you'd be saving the full kilowatt hour charge. So I've got over here, you can see full retail rate is roughly about 13 cents in this scenario, and supply rate only is about 6 cents. So you can see if you were to break out this math, the on-site solar savings compared to the net metered solar savings, and then your total savings for the bill. So on site, your savings might be almost $600, but your electric bill, you might only see 185 of that. So it's important for people to understand where their power is and where their credits are going and how to monetize that. This is an example of the new ComEd bill where you're only getting the supply side credit. And this is an example where someone has selected a kilowatt hour. And these are in all the examples that ComEd has in their FAQ section. So diving into the details on the bill, the top section, number 1, is still the same as it was. You still can see kilowatt hours from the grid and kilowatt hours to the grid. In section 2, you'll see that you've got that net metering supply credit, very similar to how it happened in the past. And there's nothing under delivery or taxes and fees. And then in the third section, you'll see that they actually are rolling over 202 kilowatt hours. So they made more power. I don't know, ComEd's example is a little bit goofy because they assumed a little bit left over from before, but oh, actually, no, I take it back. Their numbers were wrong on this example. I corrected this example. So there are 202 kilowatt hours that will roll over to the next month. So this happens very similar to how I think people were used to their bills in the past. You can also choose instead a dollar credit under the supply rate. And I think this is probably the easiest for people. I think cash is always king. And so rolling the dollars forward. So in ComEd's example, I don't know why they chose different numbers for the input and output, power from the grid and power to the grid. I would have kept it the same so people could kind of see apples to apples. But so you can see section 1, the data is captured. In section 2 under supply, the net metering is for the full kilowatt hours that were sent to the grid. And you get the full retail value of that. So if you added the kilowatt hour charges, the 5.37 cents and the 1.53 cents, that gets to you to 6.733 cents per kilowatt hour, which turns out to be a $67 and $47 credit. You'll notice under the supply section then that the section now has a negative value. That is applied to the total amount due on the bill. So at the top of the red blocks, it actually says service period total. So if you added the negative $25, the $48.42, and the $19.54, that comes out to $42.54. In their example, they had a previous credit on the bill, and so the total bill amount for this is 0. I'm not quite sure whether it got a little bit fancy on it. But you'll see under miscellaneous, there's an additional $20.29 of dollars that will go credited to the next electric bill. The third scenario that ComEd shared is, what if you are supply only, but you've chosen to go hourly pricing? So that's a little bit of a different beast. And so the bill changes quite a bit. Section 1, we still see inflow versus outflow. But under the supply section, you'll see there's some new line items. There's a capacity charge that is new. And so from supply, you'll see electricity supply charge. Because it's a variable rate, there's no rate there. And so the kilowatt hours are billed in that time of use period. So here it was $13.23 to pay for 579 kilowatt hours. So you can average that out. It turns out to be pretty cheap. There's a transmission service charge. This is a fixed fee at 0.9 cents per kilowatt hour. So that comes to 570. There's a capacity charge. Sometimes this is negative. I see it negative with quite a few solar people whose bills I've seen, but not always. And capacity, when we're talking about big rate increases for PJM, this is where it's going to hit people. So we probably could do a whole event just about capacity charges and how people can manage them. And knowing some of the solar ambassadors and how astute you are to paying attention to your electric bills, you could probably hold a masterclass on that. There's the miscellaneous procurement. That's also a new charge that's on people who are hourly billing. And so you'll see under section 2, there's 2 different credits. One is the hourly price, and that's because power that was sent to the grid is valued at the time of use rate when it is sent to the grid. And then you can also see that what we're used to, which is the net metering credit supply, if you add up all those kilowatt hour charges, you're getting a credit of 0.697. So the bill is a little bit different in the supply section for people who have opted for hourly pricing. If somebody is home a lot, working from home, perhaps they have children at home all day long or seniors at home all day long, they really should look carefully at their electric bill to make a decision as to whether or not they want to go to hourly pricing or not. On the far right-hand side, you can see, we've got the negative $42 under the supply section. That basically offsets the 46. And so the net service bill is $11.42. In this example, ComEd said that there was a $26.29 credit from the previous month. This month is balanced at 0, and there's a remaining $14.77 credit that comes through. Ameren is a little bit different. I tried to verify this, and I can't say that I feel super confident. I believe that Ameren is only doing kilowatt hour credits under the delivery section. And so you used to be able to see, under the supply section. So you can see from the arrows in the middle, the electricity delivery, there's no distribution charges, and they applied the supply credit on that lower section of the bill. And in this case, the bill was I can't see that number anymore, maybe 6 cents. So their bills, they're netting out the differences within, as you look at power in and power out, and they're applying the kilowatt hour credits there. And that is my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I saw a bunch of questions coming in. Nicola, were you watching those as they arrived?
I was. So we have a couple questions and some comments. So the first question from Jay, can you change from kilowatt hours to dollar credit for net metering?
I think I covered that.
Did you? Okay.
Jay, did I answer that?
I was wondering if you can switch back and forth and if there's a limit to how many times you can do that.
So repeat the question. I'll hear it differently then.
Sure. So, you described you could either do kilowatt per kilowatt net metering or based on a dollar value.
Okay.
For net metering.
To
you
be honest,
from one
I
to the other?
don't know if they'll let you. I know, like, if you decide to go hourly, you can go back to fixed credit, but you can't go back to hourly for a year. So you can leave hourly anytime. You get chicken, you go in and you're like, oh my God, this is scary. I can't stand seeing all of these updates constantly. You can choose out of fixed rate pricing, but you can't go back to hourly. I don't know if they'll let you flip-flop between a kilowatt hour charge. That's a great question. I can reach out to ComEd and ask that.
Great. There is another question, and then I did answer it in the chat, but I wanted to make sure everybody heard or saw the answer from Jeff Balch regarding the net metering change. You say that for new customers, delivery side credit will go away. Does that mean existing customers are grandfathered in?
Yes, as long as your system was energized and ComEd, you needed to be energized by December 31st. 2024, and your installer needed to have submitted all of the paperwork and been received by ComEd by those deadlines and Ameren by those deadlines, then you would have been eligible for legacy net metering. But if your system was not in the queue by New Year's Eve, you did not hit their deadline, and you have to move on to supply only and no longer eligible for a legacy.
And then just another quick point of clarification. So Kevin asks, did I understand correctly that credits will no longer expire? And so I think I want to make sure we're clear that the legacy system, they're still going to expire, but the new system, they won't. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I think those are the only questions that I see. If I'm wrong, now's your last chance to put a little pick me in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much, Lisa, for a really informative presentation. Yes, Jeff, I see your question about the full slideshow. We are recording, and so we will be sending out a recording of this presentation after we're finished. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks so much, Lisa. And now we will switch to Amy, who will talk to us about storage.
Oh, wait, you know what? That is a good question that's in the chat, Nicola, about if people can switch from legacy to the new.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Did you cover that? It just got in there. Okay,
I
we have two more questions.
I did not carry that, and I would recommend if you're on legacy, stay on legacy. It is not worth it. I mean, I guess maybe if your system's really old and you want the cash for the rebate, but you'll lose half your value. If let's say you've got, one thing I did not mention is ComEd and Ameren will also, it used to be that if you expanded your system, if you added one panel to your system, you were no longer guaranteed you'd be in legacy net metering. Your net metering rules would change to whatever was current. Now, legacy systems, if they do expand, they are allowed to expand. We know for sure up to 100%. The tariff has not come out from ComEd. but you can double the size of your system, and it does not impact your existing net metering agreement. So I think that's really important. But I would recommend, if somebody's on legacy, stay with legacy. It is gold, and you're really getting the true value of your solar. I guess if you were looking for some cash infusion, maybe you're selling your house, but these rules follow the sale of the house. They stick with the solar forever. And the true value is best with legacy net metering.
So that actually, I think, answers this one last question I want to get to before we switch to Amy. If you sell your house, will the new owner be grandfathered in?
Yes.
Great.
That did
Perfect.
not used to be true, but that is true.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. And now Amy Downey will speak to us about residential energy storage.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm going to talk about the overview of residential energy storage. And, oops, sorry, one second. Slide 2. Uh-oh, technical difficulty here. One sec.
I was going to say, while Amy gets that up, I know somebody asked about the, I forgot what the name of the bill is, the Clean Grid Alliance. What is it? The Clean Grid Bill. That is a piece of energy legislation that has been introduced this session. That is not the bill that the industry is necessarily working on. I did provide a link to the resources about the industry's bill. But everything in Illinois, whenever you're doing energy legislation, it's always an omnibus package, and everybody gets to have something in there. So we are working with our friends over in the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition to work together to get energy legislation passed, and the bills are somewhat alike. Okay, Amy's ready.
Sorry about that. Okay, so what we're going to cover are reasons for adding storage to solar systems, opportunities for homeowners, costs and rebates, including how the net metering system might change financials. We'll also get into a little bit of storage technology and building codes, and then how batteries connect and interact with the solar installations. So this area of the solar industry is really exciting. It's evolving rapidly, as you all know. And so it's timely to have this meeting. There are new products and new technology in the storage space is making solar even more exciting and effective. And the sales teams are trying to learn this quickly. When net metering becomes less attractive, storage becomes more attractive. And nearly all installers are offering storage options now. So we will, at the end of the presentation, I'll mention a couple of storage products that are out there that are common. So what are some names of batteries? You'll hear energy storage system, or ESS, very common here. So ESS is a group of devices that store the energy for later use. You'll have the solar batteries, but usually you'll also have another equipment box that is an automatic transfer switch, or sometimes known as like the brain of the system. And so that, or sometimes as it's where all the wires kind of come together to connect everything. So you'll see on this one, in this photo, the right one is a large battery on the right, and then on the left is what might be called like a gateway or an A gate, or a combiner panel. So what are some reasons why you might add ESS to solar? ESS can help balance the supply and demand for electricity. The ESS helps you self-consume electricity, and they are a great way to avoid power outages and a small amount of savings. So batteries are not used for huge savings, and that's something, a message we do want to get across today. Adding a home battery to a solar system creates clean energy ecosystem in a residence compared to a generator. That's a really nice plus. So you don't have gas or the smell of gas, near your home. Also, it's cleaner. Obviously, it's coming from your solar system. So imagine the solar system is charging the battery during the day and then using the battery during the high peak hours in the evening when utility rates are highest. That's a big reason why customers might choose to have a battery. But in that case, you do have to size the solar. The solar has to be large enough in order to feed the batteries daily, to use them on a daily basis like that. And then lastly, the ESS can be added with an existing solar system, which is a wonderful plus. So if your solar system is 3 years old and you want to add batteries to it, you can do that. Incentives and rebates. The incentives are the 30% federal tax credit that everyone is familiar with solar. So you're going to just follow those that timeline of the ITC. And then ComEd and Ameren have storage rebates. So you'll get an additional $300 per kilowatt hours of storage. So for instance, if the battery is a 10 kilowatt hour, is 10 kilowatt hours, then you would get a $3,000 check in the mail from ComEd. And then ComEd utility requirements. So really important to note is that utilities have a zero export rule. That means that batteries are not allowed to discharge to the grid. And in addition, the solar will charge the batteries, but not the utility. So you don't use the utility to charge your batteries. You'll use the solar to charge the batteries. So an energy storage system can only be installed with solar. So to qualify for the storage rebate, ComEd requires you to be on hourly pricing, and that's for the rebate. And so again, the rebate is $300 per kilowatt of storage. And the hourly pricing program will discuss in more detail about the benefits of when you can have good usage habits. Ameren requirements. So this one it's available for ESS at $300 per kilowatt hour. So it's the same payback as the ComEd rebate. It's available to both customers with existing generation and or ESS, and it's available for customers installing that equipment in the future. I work within the ComEd region. And so if anyone wants to add more details to the Ameren in the chat, that would be wonderful. So ComEd billing and the bottom line, this is generalizing, which, as we know, especially from Lisa's presentation about net metering, that, there are variables here with billing. There's variables with how people use their energy. So take this as like a grain of salt, but just to show how hourly pricing and batteries can help decrease your bill. So most homes with an annual usage of 9 to 10 kilowatt hours have monthly bills at about $200 a month. Now, obviously, that could be $300 a month. That's variable right there, right? This is a generalization. If you have solar on that house with at least 80% offset, the bill should be about $80 a month. And that's kind of the new, that's taking into consideration the new net metering rules. But if a customer were to go on hourly pricing with the same solar system and with good usage habits, they can decrease their bill by about $15 to $20 a month. And then if they were to add a battery and use that battery, every day to offset the peak hours of consumption, they could get their bill down to $15 a month. Now, most of the installers and the experts in this room have seen solar bills that are $15 a month with just solar. So again, it really depends on your offset. And the more that we see examples of the new with this the solar that we have installed with the new net metering, we'll see how things change on the bill. So what can cause the amount of savings to vary? This one I'm not going to explain every line, but the amount of solar and its utilization. So for instance, multiple batteries can cause the amount of savings to vary, or when you use your electricity, or how much energy your solar system produces and when. And then also your savings can vary when you export and import energy from the grid. And then lastly, inefficiency losses. So even with some inefficiency losses using a battery, if let's say the losses are about 10%, that's still better than exporting the energy with the new net metering rules. So you're still making out better. Okay. So talking about hourly pricing, the website is on the right side here. It's ComEd's hourly pricing guide. And this is a chart that obviously I took from their website. So this is a chart showing the average prices over a 24-hour time frame. The bright blue line is a summer line, which you can see from like 2 to 6 p.m. is when the energy price skyrockets because people are using their AC, their air conditioning. But down on the blue line, if you follow it to the left, 2 to 4 a.m. are the lowest energy prices. And the same goes for the purple line with fall, winter, and spring. You still have the lowest energy prices in the middle of the night, and especially from 2 to 4, even to 6 a.m. And so most people with their EV cars, they're well practiced with charging their cars typically in the middle of the night, and they sometimes can actually be paid back by ComEd during that time. These are graphs that I took actually from like a Certasun blog. Basically what it's showing here is that on the left graph is showing a bell curve that we're familiar with in the solar industry. And then on the right is a bell curve with a battery using self-consumption mode, meaning using the battery on a daily or somewhat daily basis to offset your peak hours. So on the left, the orange is the excess solar production, and the gray is when your house is consuming the solar energy. On the right, you can see the orange section is a smaller amount of excess solar production because the solar production is also being sent to the battery and filling the battery. And then the battery is being used at night during the peak hours where the second bubble is, where that second peak in the gray is showing. And so so rule 1 is charge the battery when you're producing more solar energy than household consumption. And then rule 2, discharge the battery when household consumption is greater than solar production. And so, as we know, again, on the hourly rates, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. is when the peak prices are. And so if you were to consume your battery during that time, then, you will benefit from not pulling grid energy during that time. Okay, this chart is from the ABP, and it's just showing export assumptions that depend on the offset percentage greater than or lower than 80% of the solar. offset, and whether or not the customer has also purchased a battery. So the bottom two lines are showing percentage of annual electricity usage offset by solar project. So greater than 80%. And then the lowest, the bottom line is less than 80%. And then using a battery, assumed percentage of electricity used directly on site is 75% versus 95. These are, of course, ABP's assumptions, which are different. They are different, and I do want us to consider Lisa's awesome presentation there, where she has, you know, more specific examples and more specific generalizations, which are good. So take this again as like a general overview, but the fact that this resource is there for you in the ABP website. The second comment here is that supply-only net metering's impact on savings is very heavily dependent on the percentage of solar production you assume will be exported to the grid, the ABP. And so that 80% rule, Lisa touched on it as well, is that you can really see a difference between if the solar is offsetting 80% or more of the customer's usage. Technical specs. Let's get into some text here. Codes and permitting. The ESS is newer to building reviewers and inspectors. So in some cases, right now I'm experiencing, it's a lot like Solar 2019, the Wild West, a little bit in Illinois here, where some AHJs are approving the battery projects really easily with no comments. It just flows through, it gets inspected, there's no issues. While other municipalities are really giving you a laundry list of reminding you of every code to follow. And so, especially BNF is an example where they're very, very thorough. And so when they're kind of all learning about it, they're giving you a laundry list of literally every single code in the book. And they're like making sure that it's all covered and that you're explaining everything to them with how you're going to install this. Some of the codes that we're familiar with are the NEC, the IBC, the IFC, the IRC, but also the NFPA is a big one for batteries. Battery chemistries, the lithium iron phosphate is what you're going to be hearing commonly now. It's much more common, but it's still the newest on the market. The nickel, magnesium, cobalt is older versions. Here are 6 common energy storage products. So we've got the Enphase IQ5P, and that one is familiar and an older product. It's with the Enphase. It goes well with the Enphase AC coupled microinverter solar systems. Right now, they have the 5 kilowatt hours of storage, which is a 3.8 kilowatt continuous output. And you typically need to buy 4 of these batteries for a whole home backup. But luckily, they are coming out with a better solution that's going to be way more competitive. I'm excited to hear what that's going to be. So that's exciting. Look out for that. But Enphase is for AC coupled systems. AC coupled systems are microinverters on the roof. Down under that is Solar Edge. Solar Edge is a DC coupled, which is that string inverter type system. The Solar Edge battery is a 9.7 kilowatt hours of storage with 5 kilowatt continuous output. It also has a hybrid inverter. And then the Tesla Powerwall 3 is very common. It's also a great price point. So people have really liked this system. It is an AC. It can be AC coupled or DC coupled. I have experience using it in both scenarios, which makes it versatile in that way. It is one battery is 13.5 kilowatt hours of storage at 11.5 kilowatts continuous output. So for this battery, for instance, you don't have to worry about if an air conditioning unit is already included in the customer's main service panel, it can be backed up without a problem. And it is easier to install. Then there's the Franklin WH's whole home A Power 2. So Franklin just came out with the A Power 2, which is exciting because it's very competitive with the Tesla Powerwall 3. So the 15 kilowatt, one battery has 15 kilowatts of storage, 10 kilowatt continuous output. Right now it's only AC coupled, so it's perfect for to retrofit a current solar system. And it can also pair with a generator. And it also has load management platform, which is really exciting. So each breaker can be monitored separately, similar to like a smart panel, like a Leviton or a SPAN main service panel. So that's exciting. I've also heard that Franklin is going to be coming out with a DC coupled version. Then there's also one that is called Point Guard, and this one is popular in Europe, but it's a newer product to US. It's a 5 to 8 kilowatt system size. It can be AC or DC coupled. It also has load management platform. But look out for more that might become more common. And then there's many more brands, including like the EG4. And if people want to add into the chat some batteries that they've been using, greatly appreciate that. So AC versus DC coupled. So what does that mean? Both are popular depending on the solar system design. So the AC coupled is going to be used if you have microinverters on the roof and existing solar system, which is many of the sales right now. So whenever electricity is converted between AC, the alternating current, and the DC, a percentage of the energy will be lost as heat. An AC coupled battery system can lose up to 10%. But again, if you have solar already installed on the roof, you don't want to go up there and take off all the micro inverters and then make it a DC system with an inverter and use a battery with an inverter. You don't want to have to do all of that. So it's really worth it to just keep your solar system as it is and then just add the battery. The DC coupled, DC to DC optimization is more efficient. The high voltage DC comes directly off the optimizer, sending it straight to the battery bus to charge the battery. So this is beneficial, like if you already have a SolarEdge type system, string inverter, or if you're buying solar new with battery at the same time, then you can find a battery system that does DC optimization. That's all I have. Does anyone have questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions. So I'll start from the top. Jeff Gahris wants to know if batteries can help condition voltage for sensitive household electronics.
It's a good question. Jeff, can you explain more there? To condition the voltage?
Yes, I was at a home show where somebody walked up to our table and asked that question. I think it was about, I mean, she's probably thinking of the UPS battery supplies you have with sitting underneath your desk for your computer or something. And you know, she's aware that ComEd could have voltage fluctuations, and if you have a battery system, what I'm thinking maybe the inverter does that anyway. It might help stabilize the voltage that you use inside your house, so you don't have fluctuations that might be rough on electronics.
Well, okay. I guess what I can say there is that the gateway or the A gate or that brain, the smaller box that I was showing in the first slide there, that one is installed between the meter and the main service panel. So it's installed in between, and it does have its own breaker. So it does kind of control, it's the first point of disconnect, and it does have certain limits. For instance, fault currents, like 22, kVA fault current limits. So it's possible that that might control some of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I'm not
Okay.
sure. Yeah. Otherwise.
Thank you.
Great. We have a few. Oh, okay. First, Peter wants to know, so you can set an EV to only charge at certain times. Is there a way to program a battery system to perform differently at different times?
Yes. So there are different modes on the batteries. There can be a self-consumption mode or a backup mode only. So something that's yeah, this is a good one for the ambassadors to we can probably dive into this a little bit more at another time, but if batteries are used only for backup mode, that means that the solar will fill the batteries will stay full for a while and then only be used a few times during the year if the power goes out. So that's a common way to use batteries. I was describing more in my just because it's more a little bit more variable and more detailed, I was describing in my presentation about the self-consumption mode, where if you have a solar system that's large enough that you have extra production that can feed the batteries on more of a daily basis or a weekly basis, that would be self-consumption mode. And that's how you configure the battery in that mode. For instance, if you have the EV that also talks to the battery, which at the moment, I have an example of the Tesla, where you have a Tesla EV, and then you have the Tesla battery. They can talk to each other so that you can say to your EV not to be charged by the battery at a certain when the battery is at like 50% or less. You can tell the EV to not charge from the battery. You can also keep your EV breakers separate at a non-backup section of a battery. You can also, yeah, there's different ways of doing it.
Okay, we have a couple other questions sort of related to how EVs can connect with batteries. Like, what is the status of using an EV as a backup battery? And are cars equipped with the ability to source power back to the home compatible with, yeah, I guess these are sort of the same question. Can you use your car as a battery and also have a battery system?
Okay. That's a good question. That's one I have not experienced that one yet. So I can't speak to that one. I know that we can have batteries with generators. You can still have a generator and batteries at the same time. I imagine you can, but that's all I have.
Okay. And now we have a couple questions, I guess, a little bit more about the nuts and bolts. So for instance, what is the general lifespan? And do you lose capacity in colder times? That sort of thing.
Okay. So there are warranties on the batteries, like either 10 years or 12 years are common, and it's based on the amount of discharging, the number of full discharges, and so whichever comes first. So it'll be like, you know, a large number of discharges or 10 years. Sorry, was someone? And then,
oh, go ahead. It's just like, like solar, the heat can affect capacity and production. Is there something similar with batteries?
yes, absolutely. So with batteries, if it's in a colder setting, then it can cause the battery to go to sleep. So batteries can be put outside. The limits are usually -4 degrees to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, where it's still operable and it can still work, but it will, the battery will not either fill as quickly or it will discharge faster. So it will affect if it's cold, it will be affected.
And then I think this is our last question before we should move on. Are there any alternate residential battery options like gravity or hydro systems, or battery options that can be powered by exercise bike or rower system?
Not that I know of at this time.
Yeah, maybe in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there might be, I know there's some other questions in the chat, but I think it is time to move on. We've still got a few more presentations. So if you have any pressing questions, you can feel free to email me and we will do our best to answer them after the fact. Thank you, Amy, so much for a really wonderful presentation. I think we've got a lot of food for thought now. And I'd like to introduce Jan from Elevate, and I'm going to share his presentation and we can talk about Solar for All.
Well, Illinois Solar for All,
Yes.
opposed to the federal
Great.
Solar for All, yeah.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'll get started. So again, I'm Jan with Elevate. We're the program administrator for Illinois Solar for All. So this is the sister program to Illinois Shines, also known as the Adjustable Block Program. I think the key difference between the two programs is that Illinois Solar for All's customers or participants in the lingo of the program are income-eligible households and nonprofit or municipal entities, so public sector entities. So there are two main customer types that we look at. We can go to the next slide, Nicola. Okay, so once again, it's intended to bring the benefits of solar energy to income-eligible households, nonprofits, and eligible public facilities. And one of the key features of the program is that it provides guaranteed savings, and we'll look at that a little bit later in the presentation. We can jump to the next slide. Okay, so we do have a couple different sub-programs that are worth noting. This presentation is going to focus mainly on our residential solar sub-program, which is also called DG or on-site solar, so behind the meter applications for residential households. And it comes in two different flavors. One is small, so that's any building that's 1 to 4 units. This option is oriented towards single-family homes and then 2 to 4 unit buildings. And a residential large, or also called multifamily, is for any buildings that are 5+ units. We also have a community solar option, which can serve renters, homeowners, and multifamily building owners. Next slide, please. And then, okay, so then we'll talk a little bit about some of the criteria and benefits for renters. So income eligible renters who have an electricity bill can subscribe to a community solar project. That is delivered as a monetary credit, bill credit to the renter. So that's an off-site solar system. You become a subscriber to it, and then you get a monetary bill credit on your ComEd or Ameren bill. Renters can also talk to their landlords about installing an on-site DG system. So that would be a residential small sub-program, and that would directly offset electricity delivered by the utility. So we can work with renters, but obviously we need to have the landlord's approval. and there would need to be an eligibility screening process. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so for homeowners and building owners, income eligible homeowners or building owners can do a direct install for a residential system, and that could be mounted on the roof or possibly a ground mount system if there's not adequate space. And then, of course, if codes or zoning laws permit a ground mount installation. Income eligible homeowners can also subscribe to a community solar project. And once again, that's an offsite, usually larger size system that's going to be delivering bill credits to the homeowner or building owner. And next slide. Okay, so how does ILSPA, Illinois Solar for All, ensure safe and fair big business practices? So just very similar to the Illinois Shines process, there is a registration application that has to occur. So we don't take every solar installer out there. They do have to go through a vetting process. That actually starts with Illinois Shines. So we don't take approved vendors that are not registered with Illinois Shines. But if an approved vendor looks at our program and decides that our target market is one that they want to serve, they can then apply to Solar for All. So they go through a vetting process, and we make sure that they've got the skills and follow the guidelines to ensure that there's a safe and positive experience for all of the Illinois Solar for All customers. Some of the key criteria of making sure that the households are getting what they expect with their solar systems, we have disclosure forms. These are very similar to what you would find in Illinois Shines. Those will provide details on what the customer will pay for their project, what their expected savings might be, how to renew or end a subscription if they're doing community solar. They've got 14 days to cancel a contract without any kind of penalty. The financial protections guarantee savings and low or no upfront costs for Illinois Solar for All projects. So the savings requirements in Solar for All that are that the customer cannot pay more than 50% of the value of the energy that's delivered by the PV system. So if the value is $300 on a monthly basis, then the customer can't pay more than $150. And that's an extreme example, but that's the idea. No more than 50% of the value of the cost of the solar power. And then there's a process that we have in Solar for All where a customer can definitely file a complaint if they have any issues with an approved vendor when things come up. And we don't see that happening too often in the program. So we can jump to the next slide. And okay, and then the next couple of slides will talk about eligibility. So how do we find the customers that are eligible for Solar for All? So income eligible renters and homeowners are encouraged to apply to ILSPA. Renters and homeowners who participate in certain programs or meet their county's income requirements may be eligible. So we do have a couple tools on our website. These are hyperlinks, and we don't need to open them here, but if you clicked on the first one, the income eligible lookup tool, you would find this screen that pops up below that says, see if you're eligible. What you do there is just type in the name of your county and then the number of persons in the household, and then that will return a maximum household income level that would qualify the household for Illinois Solar for All. And we also have a list of other qualifying income eligible programs that can help facilitate income eligibility verification for households. Those are things like the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. If a household is participating in LIHEAP or the Illinois Housing Weatherization Assistance Program, so IWAP, Medicaid, and a few other third-party programs that will qualify a household for Illinois Solar for All. And we can jump to the next slide. Okay, so who can participate in residential solar and community solar? So for residential solar, our small sub-program, again, that's single family and then 2 to 4 unit buildings. If you're in a single family property, the household has to be at an income level of 80% or less of area median income. And then for multifamily residential and 2 to 4 unit properties, at least 2 of the households must verify their income is 80% or less of area median income. For the residential solar large, so that's 5+, at least half of the units need to be occupied by households with incomes of 80% or less of AMI. And then for our community solar subprogram, homeowners and renters also have to have an income that's 80% or less of area median income. And then homes, just to reiterate, homes don't have to be owner occupied. The eligibility relates to the income of the occupant, not the owner of the building. And we can jump to the next slide. Okay, so savings and the next one after this. Great. Okay, so how do the households save with residential solar? So as I mentioned a couple slides ago, Illinois Solar for All requires that the costs and fees of the solar project are no more than half of the value that the participant would receive from the energy produced by the solar project. So in this example, if the participant has a specified monthly payment to the solar company, it couldn't be more than $30 or half of 60. So the box on the left, just very simply, is showing a usage of 600 kilowatt hours. And if they had a supply charge of 12 cents a kilowatt hour, their total supply cost would be $72. And if they went with a solar system, they would and kept their usage the same, but had an on-site solar system that generated 500 kilowatt hours, that would be valued at the same rate as the supply. So that would be $60. And then their total supply cost would be $12, so the 72 minus the 60. Now, what they would pay for the supply from the solar system, again, is capped out at 50% of the value, so they couldn't pay more than $30 for, or the approved vendor couldn't charge them more than $30 for the power delivered by the PV system. We do have some approved vendors that actually charge less than 50%. So some are providing solar at no charge to customers. But it is up to the approved vendor to determine what that rate is going to be. And we can jump to the next slide. Okay, so how do folks find an approved vendor? And I do want to just stress that like the adjustable block program, Illinois Shines, all of the projects have to be driven by approved vendors. So we don't recommend any specific vendors. It's really up to the customer to start that communication with a vendor of their choosing. And we have a tool on our website where they can select which subprogram they're interested in. So the program field there would be a drop down, which would be the residential or nonprofit or community solar subprograms. And then they can pick their electric utility provider and in the county in which they're located. And the tool would then return a list of approved vendors that match those filters that they filled out. And then we can jump to the next slide. And yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation. So I can pause if there are any questions.
I have not been looking at the chat, but I will take a look now. Jay asks, the 80% or less of area medium income level, is that just based on 1 year preceding the application?
Yeah, that's right. So if a person or a household applies to Solar for All and they qualify and then they don't move forward with the project and then come back a year later, they would need to do another income level check.
Great. And then Mike wants to know about ownership. So he asks, are all of the solar installations in ISFA owned by a third party and not the resident?
I would say, generally speaking, yes. And that's because the approved vendors are usually able to capitalize on the ITC. So they're bringing other value to the capital stack for Solar for All projects. So we're seeing most projects in the residential sector are either leases or power purchase agreements.
That makes sense. That makes good sense. Yeah, I think this to me was really helpful to just see it all laid out, Jan. And I think, you know, we will take a closer look to see if potentially we need to add some of this into our public presentation that folks on this call are out there doing for the industry.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other questions. Do you see it? I don't see anything else.
I don't.
See, it was so clear. It was clear, crystal clear, Jan. Thank you.
Awesome.
We appreciate that.
Great. Well, I'm happy to share with folks, and feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, people are thanking you in the chat. Okay, one more dance card.
Yes. Next up is Jeff Gahris and Jay Futterman, who are members of our Solar Ambassador Committee, and they will be speaking about community solar.
Oh, thank you. We now start off and run through some slides, and then and Jay can assist with filling in some gaps, which I always have when I talk. Let's see. Is everybody seeing it?
Yes.
So once I can manage my page here. It's a little slow for some reason. Okay. So basically, we start out, I'm just going to go through what community solar is, how it works, what it's not, how the billing works, some of the headaches I have with it, how we save money, and how to find these projects. I think got a hint from Juan's presentation. There are places where you can look up sources of community solar, and maybe go through some questions at the end. And one thing that community solar is not, this is just what's in our standard slide deck, and it's not community group purchasing, the solarized programs that where you might get a quantity discount if you and your neighbors are buying solar from the same vendor. It's not a utility scale project, and it's not municipal aggregation, which I think goes back to the days when we first deregulated power in Illinois. You had options of getting power from various sources. And municipal aggregation, I think it still exists, but it was very popular a number of years ago. And basically, community solar, in a nutshell, is you're paying into a project that's really, it's tied into the grid, but it's, let's say you're in ComEd or Ameren service territory, and it's located in that territory somewhere else, some distance away, and you're using it as if it's on your roof, but you're just using a portion of electricity that's being produced by that facility. And the owner of that facility reports the output of each solar subscription to the utility. So my share of community solar, in my experience, gets reported to ComEd, and ComEd adds a credit to the electric bill. And here's an example. Your home, say, uses 1,000 kilowatts of energy every month. And the community solar might produce a large fraction of that. Hopefully you want it more or less equal. You would receive a credit on your bill amounting to that amount, and then you pay for the remaining, and that would be payment you owe the utility company, not the community solar provider. Then you get a separate bill from the community solar provider. And actually, as it turns out, some of these community solar providers are now integrating the bill with the utility bill, so you can have separate billing or combined billing. As you can see, I think our slides could be updated because it's been a changing environment over the last few years. Here's a good example of how you can save money. I think Juan had a similar type of exhibit. Without community solar, you might be paying $109 for the electricity you're procuring off the grid. With community solar, you look at the credit that the provider gave, the community solar provider gave to ComEd or Ameren, and they subtract that off. And what's interesting is on fixed pricing, they assume 7 cents a kilowatt hour, or roughly. You know, that price varies a little bit from month to month, but depending on the time of year. But they give you a credit for that full value, but actually the solar provider will give you a discount. And typically it's around 20%. So you end up paying less with community solar because the ComEd's, and in my instance, they give me credit assuming 7 cents, but it's actually I'm paying 5 cents. And so that's how there's a savings. And this is pretty much guaranteed. I think with I don't know if there's any deals out there that don't involve this kind of savings. And then it gets a little bit complicated. Actually, my format of my billing had changed in the last few months, kind of abruptly. I mean, other than the fact it went from red to purple in the upper right-hand corner. But it just looks different now. But basically, it functions the same way. You see in the area shaded orange, you get a credit. It's almost like having solar on your roof, and you would see that on your bill. Well, here in this example, this is somebody, this reflects my circumstance. I think Jay's in the same boat, where, and this is not my bill, but it is actually a real bill. And it shows how you get the credit on this second line here. You can see it's hard to read, but it's 832 is what you're pulling from the grid, and then 360 or 382 is what you're putting on the grid with your solar system. And then in addition, you can get, if you have a greater need for electricity, like I do with electric vehicle and electric stove and everything else, because we're electrifying our home, we found that you can add capacity very easily and still have a legacy system with net metering. And it's worked out well in the sense that we can see an additional discount here because of what I said with the previous slides. You get this deduction here, and then you get a separate bill, which I think is coming. And then this example will be a separate bill that comes from your community solar provider, and the net difference is a savings. And I find the bill is kind of hard to follow in terms of tracking all the pennies, but the experience I've had is if you add things up over the course of the year, at least for me, it's sort of balancing out very nicely, and that I'm able to get to be 100% solar even though my array is undersized. And so I've been very happy with that aspect. Here's an example of Ameren, which I have never really studied in detail, but if you live downstate, you're probably more familiar with this. Now, the real question I think is that I get from the public is, where in the heck do I find these projects? And I direct them to this Solar in the Community website that Citizens Utility Board offers, and it includes a list. If you go down here, the blue boxes, you'll see various categories. Why is community solar possible? What is a good deal? And I think it's, if you click on current community solar deals, you get the following. You get this big chart. It's 4 pages. It includes 2 pages of the standard community solar offerings. And then there's also 2 more pages of the Illinois Solar for All offerings. So it's a very handy source. As a solar ambassador, I just refer people to this because it gets updated a few times a year. And as a matter of fact, the supplier I use is Common Energy, which is on this page here. I guess in my case, they're in Ameren, they're offering 10%, but they were offering 20% for me when that was available. But this will change over time as projects get built out and they find subscribers. So it's important to have the most recent available listing. So this really helps with the finding people. It's because we don't want to be in the marketing business. We want to just point them to a source somewhere where they can compare offers and do their own shopping. And so that's the last slide, but I just have a few notes, and Jay can throw in some comments too. But I found this, what I like about community solar, does help achieve Illinois' clean energy goals just as well as solar panels on my home. There is a guaranteed cost savings with consumer protection provisions. One thing that's nice is you can exit a long-term contract. I think most of these have fairly reasonable terms for if you decide to say you buy a house, you move in and you go community solar, and then a year later you get transferred and you have to go somewhere else. You may have to get out of the contract. There might be some penalties, but they made it very easy in that respect. Also, if you move from one part of your utility service area to another part, you can take the whole contract with you, which is pretty sweet. You don't have to think about it too much. The one question I still have in my mind, and I don't know if anybody else can help, but I notice a lot of people are downsizing as they get older, and so they may move into a condo and it may only need half as much energy. So I presume they would be able to go to their community solar source and say, we're moving, can you readjust the value of the contract? So those are my thoughts. I don't know if Jay, if you have anything more to add.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, I think I as part of my volunteering with ISEA, getting out and talking to the public, one thing that I always tend to tell people is that in Illinois, the cheapest energy you can get is solar, and it's available to everybody. The great thing about community solar is if you're a renter, if you live in multifamily housing, if you have a shaded roof, if your roof is going to need replacing in 5 years, then this is the way that you can get solar and save money. It's a little bit of a tricky concept, I think, for some people to grasp at first. A really good sort of analogy I kind of heard is that you can think of the community solar company basically as selling you dollar gift certificates for electricity at 80 cents each. And the dollar off comes on your ComEd bill and you just pay them 80 cents for that gift certificate. And, you know, before the change in net metering, it was kind of complicated because we'd have to explain, well, you only get savings on the supply portion of the bill with community solar. Well, now that's the same as with residential net metering. And the only other point I'd like to make is that a lot of the companies that are listed on this grid don't actually necessarily have projects available for subscription currently. They'll be happy to put you on a wait list for when another project opens up. So if you are looking for something ASAP, you have to kind of go through the list and check with different companies to see who actually has projects that are available at this time. I think that's all I got to add.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much to both of you. We do have a question, and if anybody else has questions, now is the time to put those in the chat. But Jim wants to know, with net metering, my solar production covers 9 months per year. Is there a way to add a small amount of community solar every month, which will equate to the 3 months each year that my solar does not cover?
Yeah, I'll take that, Jeff. Yeah, you know, since the net metering credits roll over month to month, you should be able to do that and just, subscribe to essentially the amount that would be for the 3 months. Now you're typically going to get more credits from the community solar during the sunny months, but that'll just sort of add to your rollover, and you'll just carry that in through the winter months when you're not producing on your own. You should be able to even it out.
Yeah.
The one other thing to think about is if you are on an hourly price at home with your solar, at least last I checked, you cannot be on hourly rate with community solar. You have to go to the basic rate. So, for me, for example, I have a big advantage because I'm on hourly rate. I have solar, I have 2 EVs, so we essentially buy low and sell high. And if I tried to get community solar for the balance of what I am purchasing from ComEd, I would essentially lose that ability to buy low and sell high. And that extra 10% or so savings from community solar that I would get might just be a wash. So something to consider.
Mhm. Yeah, and having said that, I'm actually somehow cheating the system because I have community solar on my roof, and I have hourly pricing. I don't know how I pulled that off. But I also noticed that ComEd is not always real smart. Like I've had some billing issues with community solar. Sometimes I don't get a ComEd bill. Sometimes I don't see anything from the community solar provider. There's often time delays for them to catch up and report to ComEd, or ComEd doesn't process it. I don't know, but it seems goofy month to month. But if I check out the whole billing cycle over a year and try to true it up, it seems to work. So I guess God's on my side at this point, but it works.
Great. Thank you so much. I don't see any further questions. So I think that just about wraps us up, and it's just about time. So thank you so much to our wonderful presenters. I think we all learned a lot. And thank you to everyone who was able to join tonight. As a reminder, we are going to send out the recording probably tomorrow. And with the permission of our presenters, I think we will also be able to send out the slides as PDFs. And then we can use those as resources going forward. Thanks so much to all. And I think that's about all I have. Leslie, is there anything you would like to say?
No, I don't. I don't have anything specific, but yeah, I want to add my thanks to the presenters. Honestly, this whole clean energy industry thing takes a village. I don't think anybody knows everything, so working together just makes it so much easier. And so, thank you to those of you who presented today and share your expertise. I did want to invite, Nicola, I think we want to invite the solar tour host sites, if they would like to get more involved with us, because we're a really fun group, and do become solar ambassadors. I think you're going to plan to include that in your communication going back out to the registrants, right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In addition to the recording and the slides, there will also be a number of resource links, as well as a link to become a solar ambassador, which is a little bit like being a solar tour host, except you might speak to people on Earth Day at a green event instead of at your own home in September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Spread the good news.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
everybody so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much.
I hope to talk to you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.